Good morning, everybody. My name is Joe Warther, and I'm Senior Lecturer in Accounting here at Georgia Southwestern State University. And today I want to talk a little bit about the beginning of Chapter 18. Chapter 18, as far as the test goes, I would say 20 out of the 35 multiple choice questions that you'll see on the test will be from Chapter 18. So the majority, or better than one half of those questions will come from Chapter 18. Okay, so let's get started right away. First of all, we talked about product costs and period cost in Chapter 14 and 15. But we didn't talk about another way to break up cost. And in Chapter 18, we're introduced to two different ways that cost can be classified, variable cost and fixed cost. Okay, now you must keep in mind that what I'm going to show you as far as what happens with variable cost and fixed cost happens within what we call a relevant range, okay? And you can kind of look at a relevant range as I tell everybody in class, Walmart. Let's say Walmart has $1 million of inventory. Well, their relevant range where these costs would be true at would be from 0 to 1 million pieces of inventory. Okay, in other words, a fixed cost such as rent, and let me just give you a couple examples of fixed costs: rent, insurance, property taxes, probably supervisory salary for the most part. See, they're fixed. They're fixed. They don't change as far as volume. And by fixed, I mean they're fixed in total. Okay, so if you pay $1,500 a month rent, it's a fixed cost. I mean, it has nothing to do with how many items you produce or items you sell. You still got to pay $1,500 a month. Okay, well, these two cost classifications are relevant within a certain range of capacity. Okay, for example, let's just take rent for example at Walmart. Let's say we pay $1,500 a month rent for the Americus Walmart facility, and we're pretty much stored. We got as many units in that store as possible. But let's say we want to go to 1,500,000 units of inventory. We want to expand our inventory, but we don't have any more room. Okay, so the people that own the building come in and they add on to the building. They add a whole section onto the building so we can put 500,000 more units of inventory in the store. Well, guess what? Now our rent goes up to $2,000 a month. So within the relevant range of 1 million units, 0 to 1 million units of inventory, the fixed cost of $1,500 was a valid fixed cost. But when we increased our capacity to 1,500,000 units, now the fixed cost went up to $2,000 a month rent. So it's no longer fixed. It became kind of a variable cost. So keep in mind what we learn about variable and fixed cost for this class in particular assumes that we stay within the relevant range of activity wherever we're at. Okay? Now let me explain variable and fixed cost. Variable cost in total goes up or down in total, okay, depending on volume. Okay. Now, if we have, let's say we have $5 variable cost per unit. And let's say we produce 100 units. Our total variable cost would be $500. Okay? Now, let's say the next month we produce 200 units. Now, our total variable cost would be what? $1,000. Okay? So in total, variable cost will go up or down depending on the number of units you produce. But by unit, when measured, it stays the same. Now, the only way it will change by unit is if they show you in the problem or they tell you in the problem to physically change the variable cost, to increase the variable cost by unit to a certain amount or to decrease it by a certain amount. That's the only way it changes. So mainly you can say variable cost by unit stays the same, but in total will go up, because these are total variable cost numbers here. So they'll go up or down depending on your volume. Okay? So that's the first concept. Now, the second concept you got to know about fixed cost is that in total, fixed cost, and you can look at this $1 million, or I'm sorry, that's activity. Let's say the $1,500 rent, okay? The rent cost, okay? In total, fixed cost stays the same in total. It doesn't matter if you're producing, if you only have 500,000 units in the store, 750,000 units in the store, 999,000 units in the store, you still got to pay $1,500 rent in total. Okay? Now, let's measure the cost of fixed cost by unit. Okay? Let's say we're going to only produce 100 units. Okay? What would be the fixed cost per unit at 100 units? Well, 1,500 divided by 100 should be 15. Okay, so if we're measuring fixed cost by unit, it should be $15. Okay? Now, let's take that same $1,500 fixed cost in total, and let's produce 500 units. Now, what's our fixed cost per unit? Our fixed cost per unit now dropped down to $3. So by unit, a fixed cost goes up or down depending on volume, okay, by unit. In other words, a fixed cost is actually becomes a variable cost when you're measuring it on a unit basis. But if you're not measuring on a unit basis, if you're just measuring it one lump sum, in total, it stays the same. It's a fixed cost. It stays, or whatever it is. So those two concepts on variable and fixed cost are very important because a lot of problems on the exam relate to those concepts. Now, let's talk about the high-low method, because that's a method that will break out variable and fixed cost. And I'm going to explain that using a problem, a handout problem that is in GoView for you. Okay, let's take the one set of problems. Number 57 is the number. Tasty Treats. Okay, Tasty Treats is a snow cone stand near the local park. To plan for the future, Tasty Treats wants to determine its cost behavior patterns. It has the following information available about its operating cost and number of snow cones served. Okay, now here's a grid of number of snow cones and total operating cost. And what we want to do is we want to figure out the fixed cost for the month. So to do that, we use what we call the high-low method. It's a way of estimating variable and fixed cost for the future based on past performances. And most of this data is from the past. So what we're trying to do is measure the fixed and variable cost on an estimated basis for the future. So here's the formula. High cost minus low cost over high volume minus low volume. Okay? Now, I tell everybody, all my students, to go to the volume. Look for the high volume. Okay, and if I look here, I see the volume for the month of May is 7,600. Okay, so let's put 7,600 in there. And if I go right across and look at the cost associated with that 7,600, we have $6,820. Okay, so there's the high cost, high volume. Now let's look for the low volume in the data. Okay, I see March, it's 6,200. And if I go right across at the cost, I see 5,840 for the cost. Okay, so I've got my equation set up. $6,820 minus $5,840 over 7,600 minus 6,200. I've got that all set up. So let's solve the equation. Okay, so that minus that is 980 over 1,400. Okay, and if I take the 980 over the 1,400, I should get 70 cents, 0.70. Okay, 70 cents a snow cone is the variable rate. So this equation here gives you what's called a variable rate. 70 cents is your variable rate. Now, the second part of solving the problem is setting up a second equation. Total cost equals variable rate times X plus FC, fixed cost. So all we got to do is substitute the numbers. Okay, now we know what the variable rate is, 70 cents. And for the total cost, you can use either set of numbers. You can use the high numbers or you can use the low numbers. What we're trying to get here or determine is the fixed cost. Okay, so let's say, and I tell everybody, use the high numbers. Okay, so let's use the high numbers. The total cost is 6,820. Okay, equals 70 cents times 7,600 plus the fixed cost. Now let's solve that equation. If we solve that equation, we should get fixed cost should be equal to $1,500. Okay? So what this is saying is at 7,600 units, at 70 cents variable cost per unit, plus $1,500 total fixed cost, should give you $6,820 of total cost to make 7,600 units. That's what that's saying. Now, that's okay. That's solving for fixed cost and variable rate, or variable cost per unit. Now, let's say that I want a new total cost. Let's say I have a new volume. Okay. Let's erase this. Let's keep the variable cost in there, and let's get rid of the 7,600. Okay, and now that we know the fixed cost, we can substitute the fixed cost in wherever FC is. And let's say now I want to produce 10,000 snow cones. Okay, so all I got to do, I want to know the total cost if I produce 10,000 snow cones. So all I got to do is substitute 10,000 in where the X is at, the volume, and multiply 70 cents times 10,000, which should give you $7,000. And my new total cost should be $8,500. That should be my new total cost. Okay? So that is a really good demonstration of the high-low method. You can be asked 3 questions. You can be asked the variable rate, what's the fixed cost, and what would be the total cost if I produced so many other units. Okay? And that would be the total cost of producing 10,000 units. So you can see that you really need to go over on how to do the high-low method, because there certainly will be 2 or 3 questions on the exam relating to this method. Now, I want to cover one more area this morning on variable and fixed cost, and I want to demonstrate it with a problem. And that problem is the same set of problems that I took this problem from. So let's look at the first problem. Best birdies. This is number 56. Okay, they produce ornate bird cages. The company's average cost per unit is $18 when it produces 2,200 bird cages. Okay, if $5,500 of the total costs are fixed, what is the variable cost of producing each bird cage? That's the question, number 56. Okay, well, first of all, let's figure out the total cost to produce 2,200 bird cages. Well, if the average cost per unit is $18, I would multiply the 2,200 times the $18, and I would get $39,600 total cost. Okay, that's total cost. Okay, to produce 2,200 bird cages. That's total. When you say total cost or average cost, what they mean is both fixed and variable cost together. Okay, so $39,600 is the total cost, and they tell you that $5,500 is fixed. Okay, so let's take $5,500 out of the $39,600, and we should come down to $34,100, which would be total variable cost. Okay, this is fixed cost, total fixed cost. Okay, so what I did was I broke it up. I broke the 39,600 up between total fixed cost and total variable cost. Okay, now using our concept of variable cost, we can say now that if we divide the 34,100 by the 2,200 bird cages that we produce, we can say each one of these bird cages now would be $15.50 variable cost per unit. Variable cost per unit. Okay, so again, what I had to do was I had to break the total cost down into the variable and fixed cost components. And I knew that fixed cost in total was going to stay the same. So I went to the variable cost, and the question wants to know what is the variable cost of producing each bird cage. So all I had to do was take the total variable cost and divide it by the 2,200 bird cages, and I get $15.50 variable cost per bird cage. And that's a really good example of the kind of questions that you're going to see on the exam relating to variable and fixed cost. You've got to be able to, break out, segregate or separate variable and fixed costs, and then look at volumes. And if you would have got asked, what's the fixed cost per unit? Well, then you would have divided 5,500 by the 2,200, and you would have got a fixed cost per unit. But I tell everybody to look at the multiple choice question first, read it, and underline what is being asked before you go back through the multiple choice question and pick out your information. Most of these multiple choice questions do have information in it that you will use in solving the problem. So this is a really good example, and I'll be back probably next week with another video on chapter 18, talking about some more formulas that we have to know and showing you a new income statement format. Thank you very much.